What if I told you that the freest man in ancient Rome was not a senator, not a general, not even the emperor himself, but a crippled slave, a man with no money, no possessions, and no legal rights, a man who owned nothing, not even his own body, yet discovered a secret about freedom so profound that it still echoes across centuries. While most of us today live in a society that prides itself on liberty, with endless choices at our fingertips, many remain prisoners. Prisoners of anxiety, prisoners of fear, prisoners of the opinions of others. Epictetus, the slave who became a philosopher, proved that real freedom has nothing to do with external conditions and everything to do with the mastery of the mind. As the modern Stoic author Ryan Holiday reminds us, Epictetus had nothing but his own mind, and he turned that into everything. He is living proof that the harshest conditions can forge the strongest character. This is not just a metaphor. This is history. A man in chains who was freer than the emperor himself. A man who showed that walls, whips, and prisons are powerless against a mind that refuses to surrender. His life is the ultimate reminder that the only chains that truly hold us are the ones we place on ourselves. Welcome to the Stoic Lighthouse. Our mission is simple: to let ancient wisdom shine on the challenges of modern life. If you're seeking that light, make sure to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming guides. Today, we'll journey into the life of Epictetus, from slavery to timeless wisdom. We'll uncover the secret that can break the invisible chains holding you back, no matter where you are or what you face. Before we continue, let me ask you this. What chains are you carrying right now? The fear of failure? The endless chase for status? The prison of overthinking? Remember, Epictetus believed the key was always in your pocket. You just have to choose to use it. Number 1. The world of a slave, the prison of the body. To understand the wisdom of Epictetus, we must first step into the darkness of his reality. He was not born free. Around the year 50 AD, in the city of Hierapolis in Phrygia, his very name, Epictetus, meant acquired or purchased. He was not considered a person but property. Dragged to Rome, the beating heart of power and decadence, he became the possession of Epaphroditus, a wealthy freedman in the court of Emperor Nero. Epaphroditus lived in a world of intrigue, cruelty, and luxury, and his slaves were nothing more than tools to serve his whims. This was the world Epictetus was forced into. Let us pause here. Imagine a life where your body is not your own. You do not choose when to wake, what to eat, where to go, or even whether you live or die. You are subject to the anger, boredom, or sadism of your master at any moment. This was slavery in Rome, the complete erasure of autonomy, the ultimate prison of the body. For most, such a fate would crush hope and spirit. But for Epictetus, the chains of the body became the laboratory of freedom. When stripped of every external choice, a human being faces a terrifying truth: either collapse into despair or turn inward and claim mastery over the only realm still left, the mind. That is where Epictetus began to carve out his empire. His realization echoed what Socrates had once suggested centuries earlier, that no true harm can come to a good man because his virtue is always under his own control. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist who endured the horrors of Nazi concentration camps nearly 2,000 years later, rediscovered this same truth. He wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms: to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." Frankl's words mirror Epictetus's experience. The Romans could command his body, but they could not touch his judgments, his values, or his will. This separation, the body enslaved, but the mind untouchable, was the spark of his philosophy. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who lived in Rome during the same era, put it this way: "The wise man is self-sufficient. He may lose friends, he may suffer misfortune, but his happiness comes from within. And in our modern age, Ryan Holiday distills the same lesson. Focus on what you control, let go of what you do not. That is the path to freedom. Epictetus, stripped of everything, found the line between what belongs to fate and what belongs to us. On one side, body, reputation, wealth, and the opinions of others. On the other, thought, choice, judgment. The Romans owned his body, but he discovered that only he could rule his mind. So while the outside world saw only a slave, inside, Epictetus had already become freer than the men who commanded legions. His body was chained, but his soul was in training, being forged into steel by fire. Number 2, the broken leg and the unshakable mind, the birth of a legend. In the brutal theater of slavery, one story about Epictetus shines above all others. A story so shocking that it became legend, passed down for centuries. It was told that one day his master Epictetus, whether out of boredom, cruelty, or sheer curiosity, decided to test his slave's endurance. He grabbed Epictetus's leg and began to twist it with force. The pain must have been unbearable. For most people, instinct would take over, screams, pleading, or blind panic, but Epictetus was not like most people. Calmly, as if making an observation, he said to his master, "You will break it." Epictetus kept twisting. The bone snapped. And Epictetus, without rage, without despair, simply looked at him and repeated, "Did I not tell you it would break?" This was not arrogance, it was the living embodiment of his philosophy. Pain had struck his body, but not his mind. His true self remained untouched. He had learned to separate what was me from what was merely mine. His body was on loan to the world, but his soul belonged only to him. Marcus Aurelius, who would later study Epictetus's teachings, echoed this exact strength when he wrote in his Meditations, "You may break my body, you may imprison me, but my mind and my spirit remain free." Centuries later, another warrior philosopher echoed the same attitude in a very different battlefield. Jocko Willink, the modern Navy SEAL commander, teaches the power of one word: good. When things go wrong, he says, respond with good. Mission cancelled? Good, now you can train harder. Equipment broke? Good, now you learn to improvise. Setback? Good, it makes you tougher. Epictetus's broken leg was his good. His master could destroy bone, but not his will. His injury became a permanent reminder, a scar carved into history, that true freedom is not about what happens to you, but about how you choose to meet it. Chrysippus, one of the earliest Stoics, had once insisted that external events are indifferent. Only virtue matters. Epictetus embodied this with his shattered limb. He showed that virtue, courage, wisdom, self-control remains in our command even when everything else is ripped away. And as modern writer William Burvine notes in his analysis of Stoicism, obstacles are not interruptions in life, they are life itself. Each one is an opportunity to practice virtue. For Epictetus, the breaking of his leg was not the end of freedom. It was the beginning of legend. His body bore the mark of cruelty, but his soul carried the seal of unshakable strength. Number 3, the discovery of the Inner Citadel, the secret of the dichotomy of control. The story of the broken leg is not an isolated miracle. It is the outcome of a disciplined mind, trained day after day on one central idea, the dichotomy of control. This was the great discovery of Epictetus, the key that unlocked the gates of inner freedom. He taught that life must be divided into two domains, what is in our control and what is not. Almost everything falls into the second category: our body, our health, our reputation, the opinions of others, the twists of fate, even the hour of our death. To spend energy trying to bend these things is to fight reality itself, a battle doomed to failure. But in the first domain, our choices, our judgments, our values, our response to circumstances, there lies absolute power. Here, no tyrant, no whip, no misfortune can touch us. According to Epictetus, the task of philosophy begins with drawing that line and respecting it without compromise. He wrote, "Within our power are opinion, choice, desire, and aversion. In a word, whatever is our own doing. Beyond our power, our body, property, reputation, office. In a word, whatever is not our own doing." This was not theory, it was survival. For a man who had no control over his body or his fate, this distinction was the difference between despair and strength. His inner citadel, as he called it, was the fortress of the mind, unassailable by external storms. The Greek philosopher Socrates hinted at this long before when he said that no true harm can come to a virtuous man. Centuries later, Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome and student of Epictetus's wisdom, would write in his meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But this idea did not die with the ancients. Modern voices continue to echo it. Naval Ravikant, the American entrepreneur and philosopher of our own era, put it simply, "Peace of mind comes from letting go of the desire to control the uncontrollable." Even in clinical psychology, the same principle is alive. Aaron Beck, the father of cognitive behavioral therapy, traced his method back to Stoicism, teaching that our suffering is not caused by events, but by how we interpret them. William Burvine explains this with clarity. The goal is not to escape life's hardships, but to stop wasting energy on what you can never command. That energy belongs to mastering yourself. The broken leg of Epictetus, the exile of philosophers, the tragedies of history, all of these become bearable when placed on the right side of the line. Pain, loss, death, these are externals, but courage, wisdom, and dignity, those belong to us. And here lies the secret. Once you build your inner citadel, no enemy can breach it. The world may rage, but inside you remain calm. The storm may howl, but within there is silence. Freedom, then, is not granted by society or emperors. It is earned every day in the battle for your own mind. Number 4, the slave and the master, how wisdom bridged two worlds. Here is where the story of Epictetus takes an almost cinematic turn. Imagine this, a crippled slave owned by a cruel master, walking with his limp into a lecture hall filled with Rome's elite youth, the sons of senators, heirs of noble families. And yet instead of being mocked or dismissed, he sits to learn at the feet of one of the greatest Stoic teachers of the age, Gaius Musonius Rufus. Musonius was no ordinary philosopher. Known as the Roman Socrates, he believed philosophy was not theory, but practice, a way of life tested in every choice, every challenge, every sacrifice. And against all odds, Epictetus, a man treated as property, was allowed by Epaphroditus to attend his lectures. What an image that must have been! A slave, scarred by pain and humiliation, sitting among Rome's privileged, listening to lessons about virtue, justice, and freedom of the soul. In that room, the chains of social hierarchy temporarily dissolved. Musonius taught that true nobility comes not from birth, but from virtue. He declared, "It is not ancestry, wealth, or power that makes a man happy, but virtue." That truth struck Epictetus like thunder. Here was validation that his struggle for inner freedom was not madness, but the path of wisdom. The ideas of Socrates, Zeno, Chrysippus, and now Musonius formed a golden chain of philosophy, one that Epictetus himself would one day pass on to Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who would carry Stoic thought into the very heart of Roman power. This moment also carries a timeless lesson. Wisdom erases social barriers. The noble and the slave, the rich and the poor, the soldier and the farmer, all can stand equal before the truth. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the American essayist deeply influenced by Stoicism, wrote centuries later, "A great soul will be great in any condition." That is what Musonius saw in Epictetus. He recognized a greatness that could not be chained, a mind destined to shape generations. Musonius himself had suffered exile for his beliefs, and his resilience prepared Epictetus for the storms he too would face. Teacher and student, nobleman and slave, were bound not by status, but by philosophy. And modern thinkers, like Donald Robertson, remind us that this bond between teacher and student is at the core of Stoicism's endurance. Robertson explains that philosophy is caught as much as it is taught, passed on by example, by living proof, not merely by words. Epictetus did not just hear Musonius's lessons, he absorbed them, lived them, and eventually became one of the purest voices of Stoicism itself. In that lecture hall, the torch of wisdom was passed from master to slave, and in time, from slave to the world. Number 5. Freedom and exile, proving that chains are not real. Epictetus eventually gained his legal freedom after the fall of Nero, when his master Epaphroditus lost power and was executed. For the first time, the man who had been property was now a citizen. Imagine that moment. A man once sold like livestock, now free to walk Rome as his own master. Many would expect him to seek comfort, wealth, or revenge. But Epictetus sought only one thing: wisdom put into action. He opened his own school, and soon his reputation grew. From senators to future governors, students flocked to hear the crippled ex-slave who spoke with an authority born of suffering. His scars made his philosophy real, but Rome was never safe for philosophers who dared to speak too plainly. Under Emperor Domitian, paranoia ruled. Philosophers, with their constant talk of virtue, freedom, and the limits of power, were seen as dangerous. In the year 93 AD, Domitian banished all philosophers from Rome and Italy. For Epictetus, it meant losing his home, his school, his students, everything he had built. To most, this would feel like tragedy, a cruel twist of fate. To Epictetus, it was simply another test. Musonius Rufus, his old teacher, had already warned of this reality. He once said, "What happens to a good man when he is exiled, he simply lives elsewhere." Epictetus embodied those words. He did not curse Domitian, he did not despair. He packed his few belongings and moved to Nicopolis, a city in Greece, where he reopened his school and attracted even more students than before. Exile had not silenced him, it amplified him. William Burvine reflects on this attitude with modern clarity. The Stoic learns to treat obstacles not as misfortunes, but as raw material. Exile, pain, or loss, each one can be molded into strength. The American Admiral James Stockdale, who spent 7.5 years in a Vietnamese prison, later drew directly from Epictetus's teachings. In solitary confinement, beaten and tortured, he realized that his captors could control his body, but not his will. He survived by remembering Epictetus's words about what lies within our control. Stockdale later wrote, "Epictetus taught me that while I could not control my circumstances, I remained master of my moral purpose." Think about that connection. From a crippled slave banished from Rome to an American pilot imprisoned in the Hanoi Hilton, the same principle held true. External chains mean nothing compared to the fortress of the mind. Exile did not break Epictetus. It proved his philosophy. Freedom, he taught, is not given by emperors or governments. It's not defined by borders or titles. It is a choice, a discipline of the soul. And once you claim it, no decree, no tyrant, no exile can take it away. Number 6. The school in Nicopolis, forging free minds. When Epictetus arrived in Nicopolis, a bustling port city in Greece, it might have seemed like exile had stripped him of everything. But in reality, it was the soil where his philosophy would flourish like never before. There, far from the paranoia of Rome, he founded a school that became a magnet for seekers of wisdom. Senators, young men destined for political office, even future leaders traveled across the empire to sit in the modest hall of a crippled former slave. They did not come for decoration or entertainment. They came because Epictetus offered something Rome could not, a way to become free in any circumstance. His school was not an ivory tower of abstract thought. It was a training ground, a gymnasium for the soul. Students were not tested on memorization, but on character. Epictetus's teaching was confrontational, sharp, and deeply practical. He demanded transformation, not applause. He reminded his students, virtue is not proven in words, but in actions. He would often point to the natural world to make this clear, saying, just as sheep do not vomit up the grass they have eaten to show the shepherd how much they consumed, but rather digest it inwardly and produce wool and milk outwardly, so should philosophy be digested into action. The influence of his teaching style echoes across centuries. Pierre Hadot, a modern historian of philosophy, argued that ancient philosophy was never about constructing systems of theory. It was about spiritual exercises designed to transform the self. Epictetus's school was a perfect embodiment of this. His lessons were not lectures, they were drills for the soul. And we must remember, Epictetus himself never wrote a single word. He believed philosophy was meant to be lived, not stored in books. His wisdom survived because of one devoted student, Arrian, who carefully transcribed his teacher's words. Thanks to Arrian, we still have the Discourses and the Enchiridion, texts that carried the voice of a former slave into the libraries of emperors, generals, monks, and modern readers. Marcus Aurelius himself would one day study those teachings, and in his meditations, he often spoke directly to the lessons of Epictetus. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." And even today, thinkers like Donald Robertson remind us that Stoicism is not meant for bookshelves, but for battlefields, whether those are in war, business, or daily life. Robertson says that philosophy must be embodied in action, otherwise it is nothing more than intellectual theater. In Nicopolis, Epictetus proved this. His school became a forge where broken men were reforged into free souls, not by escaping hardship, but by facing it with wisdom. Not by memorizing doctrines, but by living them. The lesson of Nicopolis is clear. Philosophy is not about knowing more. It is about becoming more. Number 7, the immortal legacy. How the words of a slave guide the world today. The power of Epictetus's words did not die in Nicopolis. Thanks to his student Arrian, who carefully transcribed his master's teachings, the voice of a crippled slave traveled far beyond the walls of his school. Those words reached the mind of Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, who studied Epictetus's lessons as if guided by them through the storms of power. Imagine the symmetry, the lowest in society, a slave with a broken body, shaping the thoughts of the highest, the ruler of the known world. This is the essence of Stoicism, truth that transcends rank, wealth, and circumstance. But Epictetus's influence did not stop with emperors. Nearly 2,000 years later, his philosophy became the secret weapon of James Stockdale, an American fighter pilot shot down during the Vietnam War. Trapped in the infamous Hanoi Hilton, tortured and isolated for over 7 years, Stockdale drew his strength from Epictetus's Enchiridion. He later admitted, "Epictetus taught me that my captors could control my body, but they could never control my will." That same principle, mastery of self in the face of suffering, has crossed time and culture. It shaped Marcus Aurelius in his palace, James Stockdale in his prison cell, and it continues to guide millions today in their struggles with stress, fear, and uncertainty. Modern psychology, especially cognitive behavioral therapy, stands as proof of Epictetus's timeless relevance. Aaron Beck, the father of CBT, openly acknowledged the debt. The origins of cognitive therapy can be traced back to the Stoic philosophers. And in the American spirit, his teachings resonate with the deepest ideals of resilience and independence. As William Burvine explains, Stoicism teaches us that obstacles are not interruptions in our lives. They are the raw material from which we shape freedom and strength. From the ashes of slavery to the heart of an empire, from a prison in Vietnam to the therapy rooms of modern America, Epictetus's voice continues to whisper, "You are not a prisoner unless you consent to be one." His legacy is not ancient dust. It is a living fire, waiting to be carried by those brave enough to claim their inner freedom. The life of Epictetus is more than history. It is a mirror held up to us. He began as a nameless possession and ended as one of the greatest voices of philosophy. He was beaten, scarred, and exiled, yet never once did he surrender his freedom. He proved that chains on the body mean nothing if the mind refuses to bow. His words echo across centuries, reminding us that the true battlefield is not out there, but within. Think of his journey, from slavery to wisdom, from broken bones to unbreakable spirit, from exile to immortal legacy. What excuses remain for us in an age where we claim freedom yet live as prisoners of opinion, fear, and desire? Epictetus forces us to face this truth. Our worst prisons are invisible, built from our judgments, and the key has always been in our hands. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who revered Epictetus, wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." So I ask you, what invisible chains are you carrying today? Which walls are you building in your own mind? Share your reflection in the comments, because your insight may be the light that guides someone else. If this journey through the life of Epictetus inspired you, give this video a like so it can reach more seekers of wisdom. Share it with a friend who needs to hear that freedom is still possible, no matter their circumstances. And if you are new here, subscribe and join our community. At the Stoic Lighthouse, our mission is to keep this flame of wisdom alive for the modern world. But our journey does not end here. In the next video, we will turn our gaze to Gotham. We will put Batman on trial. Is he the ultimate example of Stoic discipline, or is he enslaved by vengeance disguised as justice? The answer may surprise you, and it will force you to question your own battles with anger and purpose. Do not miss it. Epictetus left us with a command that resonates even now. First, say to yourself what you would be. Then, do what you have to do. Freedom is a choice. Strength is a choice. The question is, what choice will you make today? See you in the next video.